It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. Good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Che for Arirang News. Let's start with the headlines. The number of confirmed MERS cases in Korea rises again. Authorities conduct thorough investigations, even exploring the possibility of airborne transmission. For the fourth time in less than a year, the Bank of Korea announces a rate cut. The MERS outbreak forces the central bank to drop June's interest rate all the way down to 1.5%. The questioning is over, but Prime Minister nominee Hwang Kyo-won is still in limbo. Main opposition lawmakers feel strongly that Hwang is unfit for the post, while the ruling Conservative Party is pushing for a speedy confirmation. MERS cases are still on the rise in Korea. 14 new patients were confirmed today, bringing the tally to 122. No additional deaths have been reported so far, but more than 3,800 people are in quarantine. For more, we connect to our Connie Kim at the news center. Connie, could you take us through these new cases?
Well, 8 of the new infections came from Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul, where the 55 of the MERS patients picked up the virus. Now, most of them contracted the virus through the hospital's emergency room, but one case stands out. That's a woman in her 70s, and she was in the hospital for knee surgery. She never visited the ER, so health officials are questioning how she acquired the virus. And there's another transmission that's under scrutiny. A police officer who had tested negative and is now a confirmed case. Last month, the officer met a friend twice who had visited Saudi Arabia. After developing MERS symptoms, the officer visited a hospital in Pyeongtaek. A confirmed MERS patient had already visited that hospital as well. The officer tested positive for MERS and was transferred to Seoul Medical Center, but tested negative there and was discharged and quarantined at home. And after developing pneumonia symptoms, the officer went to Asan Chungmu Hospital and was moved to Cheonan Danguk Hospital on Tuesday after his symptoms deteriorated. Officials there ran 2 tests to confirm that the officer is indeed MERS positive. And to recap, the patient visited a total of 4 hospitals. Health officials say it's most likely he contracted the virus from the first hospital, but they're looking into the possibility of an airborne transmission. Authorities are also investigating conflicting MERS test results, which also appeared in the case of the pregnant woman at Samsung Medical Center.
Well, leaving no stones unturned is, of course, important at this stage. What new steps has the government taken, Connie, to clamp down on the spread of the virus?
Well, today, Daniel, officials announced plans to keep a number of hospitals MERS-free and are able to serve the general public. They plan to announce details on Friday, but the strategy is meant to allow the public to go to hospitals without fears of contracting the virus, and also to ensure suspected MERS patients will no longer be declined by hospitals. As of now, there are 16 hospitals designated to treat MERS patients only. Back to you.
Thank you for that report, Connie. A bipartisan parliamentary committee tasked with tackling the MERS outbreak held its first meeting with government officials and medical experts on Thursday. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
The special committee blasted government officials for being ill-prepared for the outbreak.
After the Ministry of Public Safety and Security was created following the Seoul ferry accident, nothing has been done to prepare for disease outbreaks, like recruiting special medical experts or buying equipment.
They also criticized the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's initial response.
Hospitals didn't share information and communicate. The Samsung Medical Center failed to quickly contain the spread of the virus, and Korea's CDC failed to work as the control tower and inform hospitals.
However, medical experts said hospitals were doing their best to contain MERS, even though the virus is new, and they're inexperienced at handling contagious diseases.
To quickly track down MERS patients, information about MERS should have been shared among hospitals. But at initial stages, we weren't aware due to the lack of experience. We're doing our best to track suspected cases and share the list with the government.
Health Ministry officials told the committee the government had deployed emergency response teams at MERS-affected hospitals to strengthen on-site inspections and prevent the spread of the virus to the general community. Officials from the Public Safety and Culture Ministry said they were working together to promote campaigns on MERS prevention and are working with the police to punish people spreading false rumors about the virus. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Let's shift our focus to the people's response to the president's latest big decision. About 2/3 of Koreans think President Park Geun-hye has made the right choice to postpone her trip to the United States amid the MERS outbreak. That's according to pollster RealMeter, which found that 63% of 500 people surveyed supported the president's decision. 20% of respondents, on the other hand, opposed the delay. President Park announced her decision on Wednesday, 4 days ahead of her scheduled departure for Washington, explaining that public safety tops our priority list. As more and more information filters out about MERS, initial fears of a devastating outbreak have subsided considerably, but naturally people want to know how to avoid contracting the virus. Experts say the best way is to boost your immune system. Our Son Jung-in sheds light on some of the simple steps we can all take.
There is currently no cure or vaccine available for MERS. It's a fact that adds to the fear factor about the relatively unknown disease as the number of infections in Korea tick up day by day. But experts say there's no need to be too alarmed about the virus. They point to Korea's hospital environment and culture associated with patient visits as further contributors to the spread, but add that most importantly, people with strong immune systems can fully recover from MERS after cold or flu-like symptoms. So how can we boost our immunity? Doctors say big differences in temperature and stress are our immune system's worst enemies. Big temperature swings between day and night can negatively affect our condition. Studies show a person's immunity level drops 30% each time their core body temperature drops by 1 degree Celsius. Also, chronic stress suppresses the ability to fight bacterial infections. Therefore, experts advise wearing an extra layer of clothing when heading outdoors at night and exercising regularly to reduce stress. Also, consuming food rich in vitamins strengthens the body. Garlic helps the body better absorb nutrients while boosting our metabolism. Onion is high in vitamin C and antioxidants, effective for people with weak immune system. Kiwi fruit, sweet potatoes, and tomatoes are other foods that can boost our immunity. Doctors say maintaining a healthy lifestyle, including good personal hygiene, drinking plenty of water, and getting more than 8 hours sleep could protect you from catching MERS. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
In a widely anticipated move, Korea's central bank has cut its key interest rate to a new record low of 1.5%. The Bank of Korea says the MERS outbreak damped domestic demand and slowing exports are threatening the economy. Our Shin Se-min reports.
The Bank of Korea slashed its key interest rate to 1.5% on Thursday, leaving it at an unprecedented low. It's the fourth quarter of a percentage point rate cut in less than a year. The central bank says the MERS outbreak is denting a recent pickup in consumer sentiment.
The decision comes as the central bank works to decrease the negative effects of MERS on economic sentiment, on top of slowing exports.
Korea's overseas shipments have been on the decline this year, dropping almost 11% on year in May, the biggest monthly drop in 6 years. In response to growing concerns that the new low rate could raise household debt even further, experts say otherwise.
Fears that the lower rate will increase household debt are unfounded, as the previous rate was already low enough to bring that about. Instead, the cut is a way of stimulating spending.
Now the focus moves to the new growth forecast the central bank is set to release next month. Given current economic conditions, many predict that the outlook will fall from the now 3.1 to the 2% range. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The 3-day confirmation hearing for Prime Minister nominee and current Justice Minister Hwang Kyo-won ended on Wednesday, but Korea's rival parties are still deeply divided. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
Rival party members from the Special Committee on Confirmation hearings met Thursday, but they are no closer to moving ahead with the confirmation. The ruling Sunri Party wants the committee to endorse the nominee and move on to the final step in the confirmation process.
I hope the confirmation can be voted on at the full assembly scheduled for Friday, as a new prime minister should assume the role of overseeing the MERS control tower as soon as possible.
However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy refuses to approve its confirmation, saying the nominee is unfit for the prime minister's post.
The nominee has chosen a path of avoiding verification. He either answered unfaithfully or said he doesn't know or didn't submit documents.
The main opposition said Hwang's attitude at the hearing lacked sincerity as he failed to submit about half the requested documents. They also questioned Hwang's tenure at a major law firm, which took place after he retired from some 30 years as a prosecutor and before he was named Justice Minister. They accused the nominee of possible influence peddling, which would explain the generous pay, about $1.5 million he received over 17 months. The nominee dismissed the allegations, and the ruling party said the hearing showed there are no major grounds for disqualifying him. While the MPAD clearly opposes Hwang's confirmation, the ruling Saenuri party has hinted at the possibility of moving forward unilaterally. However, the ruling Conservative Party is still leaving room for negotiations, saying the opposition parties have until Friday morning to fully cooperate and complete the confirmation process. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And another driving factor behind the rising political tension in Korea today marks the deadline for a transfer of a revised parliamentary law to the president for her signature. The controversial law allows lawmakers to demand changes to government ordinances, which critics say is unconstitutional because it violates the separation of powers between the three branches of government. In a last-minute attempt at a compromise between the rival parties, Chung Yu-hwa, the National Assembly Speaker, proposed changing some of the phrasing in the law to give the government more leverage in handling parliamentary requests for revisions. The ruling Saenuri Party has responded positively to the proposal, while the opposition seems to disagree. Aside from the revised parliamentary law, more than 50 other bills were sent to the president this afternoon. Korea and Japan held talks today to discuss ways to address Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Seoul's foreign ministry said senior officials from the two sides met in Tokyo on Thursday. It will be their 8th such meeting. More than 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced to serve the Japanese military during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the early 1900s and throughout World War II. The talks came as both countries are seeking a breakthrough in their frayed relations ahead of the 50th anniversary of the normalization of bilateral ties on June 22nd. You might remember the large-scale candlelit vigils that took place in Korea back in 2008. A mad cow disease scare prompted tens of thousands of people to take to the streets and demand the government say no to U.S. beef imports. They weren't successful, and many Koreans have shunned American beef ever since. But according to our Han Da-eun, that attitude might be changing.
Once considered poisonous, U.S. beef is regaining its allure in Korea. America is now expected to trample Australia to become the #1 source of beef imports in Korea. The U.S. Meat Export Federation says Korea imported 2,527 tons of American beef during the first 10 days of May, edging out Australian imports. This is the first time Korea has bought more from the U.S. than Australia in 7 years, since Korea lifted the import ban on American beef in 2008. Korea had banned U.S. beef imports in 2003 after a mad cow disease was confirmed in America. The rising demand for U.S. beef comes despite its expensive cost. Between January and April, the average import price of American beef per metric ton stood at $7,988, 32% higher than the price of Australian beef. The U.S. Meat Export Federation's Korea branch says the absence of mad cow disease for several years seems to have gradually changed Korean attitudes. They also attribute the rising demand to quality.
U.S. beef boasts premium marbling. It took a while, but I think Koreans are now recognizing the fine quality of American beef. And because of the bad image it held, we put extra effort into marketing. For instance, giving out samples at large retail stores so consumers can try it out.
Another factor, the wide use of U.S. beef in high-class steakhouses and big chain restaurants. Officials predict demand will increase even more when agricultural prices, which are closely linked to meat prices, stabilize in the U.S. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
The Green government proposed a plan for curbing greenhouse gases in the nation, a move that may help Korea climb out of the global top 10 gas emitters ranking. The joint statement released Thursday by ministries including Environment, Finance and Trade and Energy outlined 4 scenarios for the emissions target. Under the plan, the government aims to cut emissions by between 15 and 30% from current levels by 2030. The size of the reduction is expected to be finalized after a series of public hearings and submitted to the United Nations by the end of the month. And before we wrap up our newscast, we have this breaking news coming in. According to YTN, we have a MERS patient in the Samsung Medical Center ER who passed away just now. He was a man in his 60s, and that brings the total MERS death toll to 10. We'll have more updates as the story develops in our later newscast. For now, thank you for watching.